So this man who goes by the name Roxanne Tickle claimed that he had a right to be on this women's only site. Yeah. Roxanne, you really got to work on it. You have the facial recognition software that will show if a man is on there. I mean, eyes would also work in this particular person's case. He's not even making an effort to look like a woman, and yet he wants to just demand access to our spaces by saying he is one. So you somehow sniffed it out and said, no, when I said this is for women only, it's really for women only. And then he sued you. So what's the basis for his lawsuit?
Yeah, so basically what happened, I don't actually remember kicking him off because thousands upon thousands of men would try to get on the platform pretty much every day. And sometimes they would get through our gatekeeping system. So it wasn't an event removing him. It would have just been another day at the office, like removing another man. And I thought nothing of it. And then he actually called and texted my phone, which was when he sort of became a person in my life, because no other user, potential user, ex-user of the platform had ever called or contacted me via phone. It wasn't company policy. And it really scared me. And I called my dad and I said, like, this guy who has been blocked from Giggle has called my phone. And he said, just like block his phone number and don't tell your mother, because my mom sees all the death threats and the abuse that women receive for speaking out about this. So I did that. I just blocked him and I just sort of tried to block it out of my mind because it did freak me out. And then about 2 months later, I got an Australian Human Rights Commission complaint for gender identity discrimination. And that's when I had to get a legal team together. And basically how the Australian Human Rights Commission works is you can settle it. Basically, you go to conciliation, but the conditions to settle it before it would escalate to federal court was I would have to agree to let him on, agree to let all men who claim to be women on the platform, and go to sex and gender education, which could only be re-education. And I said, no, I wasn't willing to do any of that. And so the Australian Human Rights Commission advised him that he could file in federal court if he wanted to, and he did.
So, Katherine, that's where you come in. You're representing Sall, and you've had your own history in dealing with this issue where you received blowback for saying what we all know is true. Men don't belong in women's sports, and standing up for the actual differences between men and women. So you were probably not surprised that this guy was causing trouble for Sall. How did you like your odds when she came to you of, Sall's in this case?
Well, this conflict was set up in Australian law back in 2013, and it is something that I had been researching. I came to law later in life, and I had been looking at this conflict that had been created in our Sex Discrimination Act way back, it would have been about 2018. And what happened was our first female Prime Minister altered the Sex Discrimination Act, which deals with discrimination against women and enables them to have equal opportunities in public life. And gender identity, sexual orientation, and intersex were glommed on in 2013, and it sets up this conflict. So we knew that at some point there was going to be a case that was going to be brought in the federal court, because this raises constitutional questions that are going to have to go to the High Court to be settled. So we knew it was just a matter of time. So I'd known Sall through her advocacy around women's sex-based rights. She knew of me. So when it escalated to federal court, I got the call, and here we are.
Mm-hmm. I've heard you in other interviews, Katherine, speak so eloquently about why we need women's spaces. And I've heard you both say, and I love, because we do. We don't have to explain it to you. Like, we want them and we're entitled to them, and that's the end of the story. But I do love it when you take the next step and explain just why they are so important, and why, even though we might not run around articulating it every day, we know on an inherent level that we need them.
So with respect to women's spaces, Sall has a daughter I have 3 little girls, and women should be entitled to dignity, privacy, and safety, particularly when they are vulnerable, when they go out into the public sphere. And I mean, Sal has articulated this argument as well, but women should not have to rely on the fact that they are traumatized, that they have religious or cultural restrictions, that they have suffered male violence, that they are women who maybe are ashamed of their bodies, they may be overweight, postpartum, dealing with things. As women, we have to deal with things that men simply do not understand. And it is right and proper for us to have male-free spaces when we go out into public, if we're using change rooms, if we're using toilets, if we're breastfeeding our children, and enable for us to participate fully in public life. We need to be able to access those spaces. Years ago, they had what they called the urinary leash, which was a woman could only leave her home. The distance that she could leave her home was only as far as she could manage to hold on before she needed to go to the toilet again. So when we look at losing us, when we didn't have public toilets, we've only had public toilets, women, for around 120 years. And when they first started providing them over in Europe, the men were burning them down and crashing their horse and carts into them and so forth. So women's worlds were very restricted, because if you couldn't go to your mother's house or your friend's house or somewhere where you could actually use the facilities, you couldn't travel very far. So it is absolutely critical for women to have these spaces. And we know, like with respect to women in the third world, accessing education, having single-sex provision is absolutely critical to girls' attendance at school. In refugee camps, we know that sexual assault is off the charts, and it's absolutely critical for women to have safe provision. So I know it's very basic, and people are very denigrating of the toilet argument, but it is absolutely critical if women are able to get out there in the world and participate fully.
I keep thinking of this incident I had when I was pregnant with my first child, and how it is where like you feel the baby moving, and that's your daily reminder he's doing okay in there, and it's a comfort to a pregnant mother. And there was one day in which he hadn't moved, and I was starting to get worried about him, and I was working, and I kind of let some time go by, and finally I called my OB, and she was way more concerned than I expected. And she said, I was at the Marriott about to do an interview for my job. And she said, you need to get into a women's room in the Marriott. You need to have a drink of orange juice, and you need to lie down on the floor and tell me if he's moving. And I remember going in there, and I'm in this Marriott bathroom with the cold floor. And I go in there, and I did it, and I was scared. It was my first child. Thank God he was okay. He started moving. He fired right up. And there were other women in there, and we were kind of looking at each other, and they were sweet, and they were asking if I was okay, and you felt just the sisterhood, that's all. I cannot imagine if one of these men, if this guy, Roxanne, had been in there looking at me, having an experience he will never have, nor ever be able to relate to, it would have changed the entire dynamic. That's just one example that I'm sure every woman has got many that they could point to. But you know what they say, Sal? I've heard you respond to this, and I agree with you, but they say there aren't that many. So like, what are you complaining about? The numbers are low. And just be kind. Would you just be kind?
Yeah, we get that just be kind comment all the time. It's not kind to ask women or demand women see men as women, or to give up all of our rights, to give up our spaces, to give up our language. That's not kindness. So if you want to have a conversation about being kind, that's actually the first hurdle you're going to have to get over, is that there is going to have to be kindness to women as well. This is not a one-way street. I also actually don't think it's kind to tell men who are under the delusion that they are women that it's true. I think it's actually kindness to tell them the truth. And so,
yes,
even when we're talking about like the female-only spaces, like as Kath was saying, like these are necessary. This is a kindness to women, and we are constantly being like forced to relive like these traumatic experiences that we've had to justify them. It's like, no, We want them. And furthermore, these people, I don't even think are like negating the necessity of female-only spaces necessarily. They're just trying to get us to get us to see these men as women. It's like, so we are allowed these spaces so long as these delusional men are allowed in them. It's like, no, there could be just one in the world, one man who thinks he's a woman in the world. But the moment he's in that female-only space, it's no longer a female-only space. He's destroyed it. So it doesn't actually really matter how many there are. There's actually quite a lot. And so it's concerning of how many men are claiming to be women. But, there are like 4 billion women in the world. Surely we count for something.
Did you know Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the US with more than 10,000 different kinds of plants and over 2 million happy customers? And now you can grow lemon, avocado, olive, or fig trees. They have houseplants too. How fun. Fast Growing Trees make it easy. They make it easy to order online and ship directly to your door in 1 to 2 days. You can even speak to their specialists for a free consultation. You can find the perfect fit for your specific climate, location, and needs. Whether you're looking to add some privacy, shade, or natural beauty to your yard, Fast Growing Trees is ready to help you make the right selection from their nursery. Right now, they have some of the best deals online, like up to half off on select plants and more. Viewers get an additional 15% off when using the code Megyn at checkout. That's an additional 15% off your order at fastgrowingtrees.com. Use the code Megyn at checkout, MEGYN. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com, code Megyn. This offer won't last forever. Tell them I sent you. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.